fell in love, and very early on, Brooke said to me, I have something I need to tell you. I haven't been completely honest with you.
In this episode of In the Shadows Being Transgender, Shannon and Brooke.
Welcome to In the Shadows, where we shed light on difficult issues right here in our community. I'm Patty Lemons. Today's guests are just amazing, and they really embody what I hope to accomplish with this series: understanding and love for friends, family, and people in our community. Imagine your spouse telling you they thought they were transgender. That's what happened with one Springfield couple just a year and a half ago. Shannon reached out to me when she heard about our Being Transgender series, and I'm so thankful for the trust that she's placed in me with telling her story. She said she met her partner Brooke, who was he at the time, and he told her he suspected he was transgender but wasn't going to do anything about it. They got married 5 weeks later, and within just 3 months, she said it was evident that it was just tearing him up inside, not to be living as her true self. So they started doing some research, they found a gender therapist, and then they started hormones. Brooke says that she's known since she was 11 years old. Joining me today are Shannon and Brooke. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Shannon, let's start with you. It sounds like you and Brooke had a whirlwind romance. Can you tell me about it?
Well, we first met and we had so many things in common that it just became evident to both of us that we were in love and we knew we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. And so we knew we were in our late 40s. We knew that was what we wanted to do, and so we just went forward with it. And it's been the most amazing thing ever, waking up, spending every day with your best friend and the person that you absolutely want to be with and spend time with.
You said you were in your 40s when you met Brooke. Had
Yes.
you been married before, had kids? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, I actually had been married previously. I have 4 children, and Brooke didn't have any children, so that was definitely a new experience for her.
And tell me about your kids.
I have 4 children. My oldest daughter, Chelsea, is almost 29. She has Down syndrome. I have a son named Gavin, who's 27. He's married and has 2 little grandbabies. I have another daughter named Asia, who is 25. She's married and just graduated from physician assistant school. And then we have, still at home, a 14-year-old son named Atticus.
Brooke, what about you? What did it mean to you to have a spouse who was and still is so supportive?
Oh, it meant the world to me. When something that heavily weighs on you for so many years, it's nice that if it ever does erupt, that, you have a supporting partner.
So had you been married before, relationships? Can you tell me a little bit about that? You don't have to if you don't want to.
No, I was married once before. She passed away.
Sorry.
No, it's life. Death. She. It was a very similar type of whirlwind romance in the beginning, and her and I were married in about 6 months' time from actually meeting each other, and it was wonderful. It lasted quite a while.
So can you tell me your story? How did you know that you weren't being true to yourself? How long had this been going on?
I knew something was definitely wrong when I was around 10, 11 years old, and I didn't know what was wrong, but I did know that something was not right, and I couldn't tell if I was losing my mind at such a young age or exactly what was happening, if it was puberty and just not understanding the changes. Well, the changes weren't what I was expecting. I grew up in a small area, and I repressed that because I already, at a young age, knew what bigotry was. So I just pushed it down and got married, bought a house, did the stuff that we're supposed to do. And when my first wife passed away, I re-examined my life and what I wanted from it, and knew that I had not been happy with myself up to this point. And I had a lot of repressed anger. And when she died, it set me on a new course, because we only get one opportunity to be ourselves, to be truly ourselves. And it's just being a good person and being true to who you are.
So I grew up in the 70s and 80s also. Were there any indications in high school or anything like that in this small town that you were in?
Any indications meaning?
That you weren't being true to yourself.
Oh, yeah, every day. Every day. I was angry at being raised in a small town, like I said. I was angry because I was raised with religion, and I was angry that God wasn't answering my prayers and why he was trying to drive me insane.
Could I add something?
Sure.
I think, to me, one of the most profound moments for Brooke was when she was 11 and realized what was going on. I'm a girl in a boy's body. That would have been in the early 80s in Southwest Missouri. No one knew what transgender was. There wasn't a label for it. Maybe we'd seen a character on Rocky Horror, and I was raised extremely liberal by hippies, if you will, drove around in a VW bus. But even with my liberal upbringing, I didn't know who a transgender person was. So for Brooke to have known this is what she was without even having a label is very profound to me, that she was able to identify this and know what it was.
So you said you grew up with hippies. Does that mean that you've always been pretty liberal and open-minded, or has this been a whole new set of rules for you and a new journey?
I was lucky enough to be raised extremely liberal. I was raised that love is love, and my family is all accepting. Though that hadn't been my path, I certainly didn't go out looking for a transgender partner. But we fell in love, and very early on, Brooke said to me, I have something I need to tell you. I haven't been completely honest with you.
Was this before you were married?
Yes. We'd only been dating 2 weeks, I think, and spending every day together, every moment that we could together. But she's, but we knew enough about each other that I think she felt like I was safe. And my first response was just within seconds, well, what does that mean to you? Not knowing myself, I had just never had myself in that position. And people and I'm even guilty of this, people automatically link gender and sexuality together, and they're two completely different issues. One of our friends, who is also transgender, says, well, your gender is who you go to bed as, and your sexuality is who you go to bed with. And I thought, that's so good. But so I'm in this relationship with this man, and he tells me he's transgender. What does that mean?
Right. So tell me about that conversation then after you got married, when you could see that Brooke was not being true to herself. What was that conversation like?
So I started seeing this huge gap in this person who was the kindest, most gentle person I'd ever known that could get extremely angry. And so I thought, because that what she had verbalized to me was, I'm transgender, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm 40 at that time, 45 years old. I've lived with this my whole life. You need to be aware of this if you're going to be my partner. So I joined a Facebook group for partners of transgender people, and started at first just kind of watching and reading and learning. And then it became more and more evident to me other people were having similar experiences with the anger and the frustration and all these feelings that had been buried. And so I'm an information person, so that's the first thing I did was start gathering information, and we started having all conversations, which we'd always talked about it, and it seemed like it was such an impossibility for Brooke, because she was living in the small town where she grew up, where her family had a fairly large business. It was a construction business, so it was very masculine, and there was fear. There was definitely fear. The violence against transgender people is real. And so we started talking about it, and I said, like she said, this is the only life we have. And so we sell out of the business. So we move to another area. Let's start looking at those things. This is the only life we have, and I want us to be together. And that's when I said, my love transcends gender. To me, gender, I love the person, and the gender is just like your hair color. It's just one facet of your personality.
You seem like you're a great advocate for Brooke and all people who are transgender. Is that something that just automatically happened from day one? Were you supportive, or did you have to think about it a little bit?
Oh, I spent a lot of time in my head thinking about it, and what does this mean, and what does this mean for my future? What does this mean for my family, for my kids? What professionally, how is this going to affect Brooke and the rest of our lives? And I hadn't really ever known a person who was transgender. So we quickly hooked up with the refuge group at the Glow Center, and we just went. And it was beautiful to see people of all walks of life. We saw young people, we saw older people, I didn't realize at the time that gender is more of a spectrum, and we saw non-binary people. I didn't even know what a non-binary person was. So it's given me a great view of the world from a different angle.
So I've touched on that a little bit in the other two podcasts that I've done. How are we all a spectrum? What have you learned about that? That's really interesting to me.
So I have learned that we all have male and female parts of our own personality. I tell Brooke all the time, I know in my very essence of my being that I'm a girl. I've never questioned it. I've never had any thoughts otherwise. But I see now, knowing and learning, and I have friends that some just feel right in the middle, and that would be a non-binary person, or some non-binary people feel more female sometimes and more male other times. We talked about what would be safer. Would it be safer to live as a female at home and just be more androgynous when you're out in the world? And I think we're still kind of experimenting with some of those things.
Sure. Trying to find my place.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your journey, and when did you decide to present as female?
Oh. Well, my journey took me through high school, and I knew long before high school that a small town was not where I wanted to be. I knew that there was more to see in the world, I knew that the world was a much larger place than myself and my immediate surroundings. So I had the opportunity to move to the West Coast, and I lived out up and down the coast between Seattle and San Francisco for the last 14 years. And
Well-
I grew tremendously by surrounding myself with very intelligent people. And I didn't do it intentionally, it just happened.
Tell me about both of you, your family acceptance.
Well, my family, who again is very open and liberal, has been curious. They've wanted to learn. They want to know more about it because it's, again, being transgender isn't something, we maybe have seen someone who's transgender and we don't really understand. I certainly didn't understand the differences between a cross-dresser, a transvestite, and a transgender person, and how all of those linked together are transsexuality.
So can you explain that to us?
So transsexuality is the umbrella term. A cross-dresser is someone who still identifies as the sex they were born as, but they like to wear clothes of the other gender. A transvestite is someone who does it for sexual pleasure, and it might be considered more of a fetish. And a transgender person is someone who doesn't feel like their gender aligns with what they were born with physically.
Okay. So and I'm sorry I interrupted you. You were telling me about your family support.
So my family was very supportive. Of course, they didn't know Brooke prior, not very much anyway, and so they jumped on the bandwagon. We were very surprised in the kids and how, like my 14-year-old was very empathetic and said, wow, that must be horrible to feel like you're in the wrong body. And I said, and we're going to see things changing. And, there's going to be some girl clothes and those kind of things are going to start happening more and more at home. And they said, well, that doesn't matter. And even my daughter with Down syndrome, I sat her down and I thought, she's pretty high functioning and very social. And so I tried as well as I could to say, that Chris feels like a girl in a boy's body, and we're going to start calling her Brooke because that's the name she's chosen. And you're going to see her wearing some girl hair and wearing girl clothes. And she said, well, I don't care. And I thought there's something so pure about that obviously they both knew, well, the person is the same. This is all a form of presentation.
Right. And do you want to talk about your family?
Oh, my family. Well, we have the families that we are blood related to, and we have the families who we create through friendships and outside relationships. My family was not supportive. I'm not going to say they're small-minded people, but being in a small community can definitely influence how people react. So no, we don't keep in contact anymore, and I'm okay with that, actually. I wish them the best. I really do. They did a fantastic job with my other siblings and everything, and I just don't need that type of negativity in my life. Shannon pulled me out of a hole of just terrible sadness, and this is the evolutionary path that I've chosen. And Shannon might be able to answer this better than myself, but this is not a psychological issue. The DSM-5 25, which is the latest, medical something.
Psychological diagnoses.
Yeah, no, it's classified it now as a medical condition.
Right.
So at least I can satisfy myself knowing that.
Right. Has there been suggestion that people who are transgender have some sort of mental illness?
Oh, well, that's why I hid it. It wasn't just, well, not knowing the term back in centuries past. It was classified all together, lumped up, and yeah, you were not right. You were a bad person. You were, just immoral. I don't know. It's just not positive. I don't understand how people can be so negative. How does it affect you?
Right.
I'll go back to that. How does it affect anybody but the person or the partner in the family?
So if you want to share it, how did you know? What gave you an indication?
I always knew.
I mean, it's more than wanting to wear dresses. Kind of explain.
Oh
to
no,
us.
it's in your mind. You just, I never could look in a mirror. I never did really know what I looked like. I just knew that everything that I saw when I did see a reflection was not representing what my mind was telling me. And I know the mind and the body appear to be two separate, or one full thing, but no, they work independently. Otherwise, my brain wouldn't be telling me something differently. And the funny thing is that I'm not the only one. There are so many people that contend with this, whether they come out to the world or not.
What was your brain telling you?
My brain was telling me that, essentially telling me that I needed to get hurt somehow, not harm myself in any way, but I just had to get hurt somehow in order to put myself into the hospital and hopefully, I don't know, I was just young. I would, just hoping for something different. Maybe there could have been complications. I don't know. And I just had all kinds of theories going through my head as to how I could do what I needed to do with religion in my mind back in that time. That's essentially what it fell back on, was prayer. And that didn't work.
Do you want to talk about religion at all?
I don't think probably this would be a great time for that. Sure. Another time, absolutely.
Sure. Shannon, what has it been like watching this transformation, this evolution, and seeing this person grow and become Brooke?
That's really been amazing. So Brooke previously as a man was one of the most, there was nothing effeminate about him. And we see this in a lot of our friends and acquaintances now who are transgender, is they almost try to overcompensate. It was Chris, I try not to use that name, but one of the first things that attracted me to him was he had a really long beard, a beautiful red beard, and was a construction worker, moved heavy equipment, just very, very manly, carried himself very manly. And so relearning those things, and what I saw as things developed was there was this girl inside who Chris had been protecting for his whole life. And I can't imagine having to get up every day and act like I'm the other sex. These are the people who deserve Oscars. You know, Brooke said to me once, she said, even in your sleep, you have to maintain it in case someone wakes you up. You're still a man. You have to, it's a constant act. And how exhausting that is to portray that all the time. And we have the little euphemism between us that she says I came along with a little pick and just started picking into the wall so I could see the girl and say hello. And so then, yes, through gender therapy, the first thing the gender therapist said was, that beard's got to go. But Brooke touched on this a little bit, the dysphoria of not wanting to look in the mirror. And I had seen that dysphoria. And so it's been a wonderful change. And it's pretty...
Beforehand, before I went on to hormones and everything, I had dealt with major depression my entire life. And those that have dealt with depression know it's not easy and it's not fun. And anxiety as well. And no matter what I did, even when the doctors put me on medication, it really didn't help. And I was on very heavy doses and tried different prescriptions, and it just didn't help. And when I went on hormone prescription, it calmed my mind and made everything right. That's my description of it. It just made everything come together, just mesh wonderfully.
So with the help of Shannon, you were able to have the courage to do this. Was that a weight lifted?
Oh my gosh, yes. It was enormous. It was the breath I had been waiting to take my whole life. The exhale and the stress. It was enormous. I can't thank her enough for being so supportive.
So I've read that there are some pretty strong mental health implications for especially children whose parents just say, no, you're just going through something. If you don't let them be the person that they're meant to be. And you lived that. You lived with a lot of depression and anxiety. Can you tell me what you know about that just to help other people? Depression and anxiety and living with it? Oh, my goodness. It's something that consumes you, and you try to... There have been many times when I could be driving down the road and my anxiety would kick in and I would have a panic attack and I would have to pull over to the side of the road and I would just scream as loud as I could, trying to make it go away. And that never helped. And I knew that I could not maintain that life. I tried till that point, till 40-something years. And I'm no stranger to exploration, so why not? It can't hurt to try to better yourself. Not at all.
One thing I did do was I developed a Facebook page, a group, and it's because Brooke did not want a Facebook just because of some of the negativity that had happened when she first came out. And so I entitled it Brooklyn a Safe Place. And it goes through the stages of our realizing, and there were photographs, there's information there about being transgender, about, all kinds of statistics. The American Academy of Pediatrics just came out in the last month with a study that said they think 2 to 3% of kids in school probably have some transgender tendencies. And there's all kinds of fascinating research going on with hormonal washes to the fetus, and thinking that at one stage the wash is attributed to which genitals the baby has. Another stage, about 15 weeks gestation, is the brain. And if one of those is a little higher in testosterone than the other, that's where we see the gender dysphoria. And so they're coming along with those things. And I think when people can look at it and see that it is a medical diagnosis, it's an imbalance. It's like a thyroid problem. There you just have the wrong hormones that need to be corrected, that there will be more acceptance.
Have you talked to a physician, and what has I haven't had the opportunity to talk to a physician yet, and I'd be really interested to hear what that person says. So tell me that perspective. Do you know it?
Oh, there are, even in Springfield, Missouri, we have come across some very accepting physicians, and there are physicians who are willing to treat. We get our hormone therapy done here in Springfield. Other physicians who say, I don't know that I know enough about it, but I need to learn. Let me walk through this with you. The whole issue of being transgender is being viewed from medical. I'm in healthcare myself, and it is being viewed completely different than it was 10 years ago.
So just last night, I received some questions on my Facebook account on this topic, and it was from a pastor. And his inquiry was about whether being transgender is real. How do you back up what you say, and what do you say to that?
Well, what I would say to someone who's asking that is, if you've talked to any transgender person, they will tell you what they're feeling is real. As I mentioned before, Brooke knew what it was without even having a name for it. If children are left open to just be who they want to be without pressures of society or parental or religious pressures telling them they need to be someone else, you would see it come out more naturally. I think that I guess I don't understand why. I don't ask them to not be religious, so I don't know why they would ask me or my friends or my family not to present as they feel authentically.
Another one of his concerns was biblically based, he felt, and he couldn't accept that lifestyle. What do you say? What answer would you have for him?
I don't need him to accept my lifestyle. I need him to live his life that is authentic to him, and I need him to allow me to live the life that is authentic to me.
What's the best advice that you have for other people who are in your situation? Maybe they're still learning. Maybe they're still discovering. Maybe they don't know. What's your advice?
My advice would be to reach out through one of the support groups and get in contact with other people who are transgender or family members of people who are transgender. There's some wonderful things in the world that I didn't even know until I went to group. Things like, I'm very heavily tattooed. Some of those things are signaling to other people that you're safe. I've been a nurse in the health system for 25 years. I've always went to those kind of patients, not realizing that that was my own signaling, saying I was safe. When Brooke had her long beard, that was her way of signaling to the world, I'm different. I'm not like you are. Some people, you'll see it in hair color. They'll put pink stripes in their hair, and that's a way of signaling to say I'm safe. And beautiful things like that I've just learned from being in group. And you hear people tell similar stories. Some have supportive families, some don't. Brooke mentioned we have developed our own family. And it's a beautiful family of loving, accepting people. I had a tea party for Brooke when she decided what was going to be her new birthday. And we invited people from all walks of life. And people came from all walks of life. People Brooke hadn't ever met that had been in my past, people from her past, just all different people. But they came to say, we support you, and we support you living your authentic life because everyone deserves that.
How do you both have the patience to visit with me and answer some of these questions?
Well, I really want to help educate, and I want people to know that we're just like everybody else. And this I don't want to say this can happen to anyone, but that's part of why I created the Brooke page, because I have lived here my whole life. I know a lot of people, and I wanted them to see, wow, this could happen at Shannon's home. It could happen anywhere. And that's what I want people to see, is that we're more like a normal couple than not.
Brooke?
Um,
Do you just want to be left alone to live your life, or are you happy to help educate people?
I have to be, in my past, I always was at the back of the classroom hiding. And I know now that there's no escaping being an advocate for younger people. I'm not saying I'm the first or even the 141st, but I'm still going to be a positive role model to kids, younger people, and even people that are older that are trying to discover themselves as well.
One criticism I have heard is if kids go to their parents at a young age and they're not supportive, do you wish that you had recognized this earlier, or that you had done something about it earlier? And is it wrong to let kids go one way or the other when they're very young?
No, of course not. Yes, absolutely. Now, sitting where I am in life, I would have made myself much happier had I just gone the path that I wanted and knew that it was right for me, instead of trying to divert, and blend in with society.
I think one thing that is a misconception about children that are coming out as transgender is typically they do not go ahead and do the hormones of the other sex for those children, but what they do is they block puberty. And so that stops the dysphoria from the other sexual organs, hair, those kind of things forming. And and then as that child works with a therapist, with a physician, if they decide that no, this was not transgender, I'm not transgender, then all they do is stop taking those blockers and they go ahead and go through natural puberty. So it's at least giving them the option and not having to undo the gender that they don't want to present as.
Do you know if that happens a lot?
I do know that it happens. Children taking the suppressive.
And then deciding that it's not a gender issue?
No, I don't think that happens very often. But I know the American Academy of Pediatrics is looking at it as you're not doing harm. And then once the child becomes an adult, they can make the decision. But you've blocked and done them that favor.
So you are both loving, accepting people, and I've really enjoyed talking with you. What do you want everyone to know about you both?
One thing I expressed to Brooke early on when she was saying, I don't know that I want to go out in the world and give the world the opportunity to be cruel to me, was I said, we have no idea how many people we're influencing, how many kids that see us out and see that Brooke is a transgender woman and she's beautiful and we are a family and we are a couple and maybe is hope for me in the future, or that's what I am. I said, we'll never know the magnitude that we've influenced. And I'm proud of that. When
it was presented to me that way, that exact way, I couldn't do anything but smile and know that I have to take a step to the world and, yes, be as positive an influence and role model as I possibly can be. We are, like you say, a loving family with wonderful morals. And, I wouldn't change anything.
The generation coming up, those who are hitting their 20s, they're such accepting kids.
Absolutely.
That's what I've seen. I have 2 daughters that age, and I'm shocked at how much they've opened my mind to lots of things. And I'm thankful for that. Do you think the future's bright for us?
Absolutely. The information is right at your fingertips, and not hearsay, actually medical journals and peer-reviewed papers. You have the world at your fingertips with the internet. Use it. Better yourself. Get smart.
How about you?
Yes, I definitely think that the future is bright, and that even looking at our own house and my son and his teenage friends that all know and accept Brooke, and I think what a great experience this has been for them to see that and to see, they're still the same. It's all the same. Some of my son's friends' little sisters have given Brooke makeup tips and gifts of makeup, and it's just we're in awe of the kids and how accepting they all have been.
Absolutely, yes.
Do you think that one day this will be considered normal? What I'm saying is, in years past, it wasn't normal to see a black person and a white person together. It's totally normal now. Nobody thinks anything about it. Tell me about that. Do you think that one day people will be accepting? And
yeah, absolutely. Like I was saying earlier, you can't stop progress, and we are moving forward whether people enjoy it or not. It's definitely, like I said, it's not here yet, but with the next generation, I certainly see that it's going to be as accepted as gay people are currently, I guess. It's going to be understood as just something you're born with.
I read recently that said an article that said they feel like transgenderism is right now where homosexuality was in the 80s. In the fact that we're starting to say we're here, we're out there, deal with us, know we're here, and
we're not deviants.
And we're not going away.
No, we can't go away. We're not wrong about ourselves.
Anything else that you want us all to know?
Look out. I mean, it's, like I said, it's coming whether you want it or not. You can't stop that. It's since the Dark Ages, things keep changing, becoming more and more accepted. There's no getting around that at all.
If you were to have a conversation with an adult who is in the position that you were before, what would you say to that person to just encourage them?
I don't know how convincing I could be. I only could be convincing to myself, but I would tell them, what do they have to lose? If they are curious and it's affecting their mental health, then what do you have to lose? You really don't have anything to lose. You're not going to just instantly change into something else. It takes time.
Any parting words you guys want for us?
Next time you come across a transgender person or someone that you maybe even think is living on the fringe, smile and say hi.
Yes. And I was even shocked at the amount of people that came out to me and just in the local area, you would be amazed, impressed even. Yeah.
Any wise words about love to end on?
Oh, well, love is blind. Look at it with closed eyes. Just go into it with an open heart, and as long as you're not looking for something specific, you will find it.
Well, thank you both for being here today. I'm really excited to share this story with everyone. I think you are going to open some hearts, open some eyes, and I just really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of In the Shadows. No matter what our backgrounds are, I think we can all learn from this couple about acceptance, understanding, and love. I can't wait to dive into the editing and mixing of my next episode featuring Dr. Sharon Vermont, who's a pediatrician in St. Louis.
Sex is based on genitalia. Gender is how a person feels about themselves, and it comes from the brain. You know, most of the time, the way a person feels about their own gender does match their anatomy, but somewhere between 0.5% and 1% and 3% of people identify as trans. And those are people who, in their brain, at the core of who they are, they fully feel that they are a gender different than what they were assigned at birth. It really comes from their brain and how they feel about themselves.
In the Shadows is currently looking for sponsors. Please visit intheshadowspod.com for more information. I hope you'll share these episodes on your social media pages and join me in educating the public about this topic. And as I always say, please remember to be kind to everyone. We don't know what challenges others are facing on any given day, and a smile from you could turn their world around. I need to give a shout out to my youngest daughter, Joni Lemons. She actually wrote and donated all the music for the Being Transgender series. A year ago, she was struggling with anxiety and lots of changes in her life. She was a freshman in college, she had just experienced her first breakup, and she was 7 hours away from home. She founded the band Lemon Drop on strong feminist roots in support of the LGBT+ community. It was her way of turning her experiences into something positive and to try to help others feel good about themselves. I'm going to end with their first song. It's called Bloom, and it just seemed fitting today.